Now, here's your hosts, the League Dad, Kevin, Mitchell, and Alistair.
True, we could. We could talk about Arena as well. That's a fun one. Have you been playing a lot or a little, or what's your...
I played a decent amount, but I'm not like high or anything. I'm like 15 or 1700. I played a couple, like 8 or 10 with friends, and it was really fun. Yeah. But I think until they like start throwing some balance in, and I don't see the same shit every game giving me cancer. Basically, I'm just waiting for like the perma launch when they like do patches and stuff.
Yeah, they've had some patches. I actually haven't played. I played only a little bit after PBE. I spammed it on the PBE, and then I only played a little bit of it. Yeah, well, I got busy, and I kind of got bored of the mode because of the balance stuff too.
Yeah. I think it has a lot of potential if they like. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be like 3v3 twisted tree line levels of balance, and if it has that level of variety, I'll play. But
yeah.
It's just so fucking lame to play into like Heimerdinger and Shaco and all this
Zyra,
uninteractive dark. Yeah. It's so annoying.
Dude, I have a 100% win rate on Zyra. It's like 5 games or 6 games. I just haven't lost on her. It's it's pretty crazy. She's so OP. Also, I'm pretty good at her.
Corridors and all these feathers. And yeah, it helps to be good. I don't think Xayah's a free win. Some of those characters though. Like I play it myself. Though. It's not like I don't, but it's just such a pain.
Yeah, you know what I think they could do? We could just keep this as the arena talk. I don't know, maybe. But, like, what they could do, is I like the augments and the stuff, but, like, it kind of gets old for people who spam the game to see the same augments over and over that are, like, these are the obvious that are broken or not. And I think it'd be cool, like, in TFT, you have, like, seasons where they change everything. I think they should do that. Yeah.
I agree. I think they should change that, and if they don't want to change that, at the very least, like the augment numbers should like have variance, or should just change based off of the current balance. Because some of the augments are just like clearly better. I read it once, and I'm like, how is this in the same game as this other augment?
Yeah, and then some of them are so obscenely broken with like specific champions too. That's like must take, and if you don't get it, you're screwed, kind of thing.
I think it's a good first pass. Like it's very rare that a new mode comes out and like it hits all the like fun, addictive stuff well enough. So if they put love into it, it's just like a lot of things in League. If they put love into it, it's gonna be good.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if they put a lot of love into it, like TFT levels of love, I think it could be insanely fun.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
because they like missed on season 2 of TFT. It was like bad, and then they've been doing pretty well after that. So they learn.
Yeah, I hope they learn with this. They just have to commit to it. I think also if they change the map, I would love that too. I don't want the same. I hate Nefiri, Samira, Pike. I hate those. Like I kind of want them to do something different with those, maybe. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it about Arena. All right, let's talk about LCS. We didn't even start the podcast, so I don't know how that's gonna work. Okay, we'll just do the intro right here. Okay, and counting down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to the All In podcast. It's just going to be me and Kevin today. Scheduling issues are going to continue to go, but we have a great first week of LCS playoffs to talk about. You missed the last episode where we did our All Pro and stuff, so maybe we can dip into a little bit of your choices. But first, how you doing? How's it been? In the life?
It's going well. I was in a meeting with Team Liquid's ecom team a couple weeks ago, so that was fun. We're going to try to get them launched on TikTok, so that's exciting. I might be talking to the director of e-commerce at Riot soon, so I'm looking forward to potentially getting Riot stuff on TikTok. That'd be sick. And besides that, I'm going to Vegas next week, so it's a very busy time for me.
Well, I mean, that's crazy. You could actually like be working with Riot and stuff. You could... That's really cool.
One thing I've noticed, like this is just like me as a fan, right? Like it's so hard to get hear about or get good Riot merch. Like unless you go to the in-person event, like how often do you see like stuff about like cool figures or plushies or anything? Like you can get them in person. Sometimes they're in the client, but I feel like Riot doesn't do a good job of like pushing their stuff at all. I feel like there's a market, but that's just me talking as a Copium e-commerce person.
No, I kind of agree. I kind of had to push and shove to get myself a Riot Poro thing because it was just always out of stock, out of availability on their website. Yeah, and I feel like that's a big problem because it was out of stock for a long time until I got one. But
absolutely, they just don't want to take my money.
Yeah, take my money seriously. Honestly, Riot could make a lot of cool merch and stuff in that department if they just advertised it well enough. Yeah, I mean, it's already people get custom stuff made all the time. All right,
Yeah, exactly.
that's cool. That's your life. My life. I am interviewing, and I think I got a job, and that's pretty much it. And then when I get a job, our times and schedules are going to be even wackier than they already are. So we'll see how the podcast does after, but we are avid. It will continue on.
Yeah, we'll
This
always
L-
continue. It'll just probably be jank scheduling.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
goal.
sure. True. Let's talk about LCS playoffs first week. It was interesting. The games were fun to an extent. They were very back and forth, lots of action packed. I know it probably wasn't your favorite results of how it went, but did it go how you expected? We could just start with EG versus TSM. Like, what were your thoughts before the match happened, and then you can go into what your thoughts
I thought
actually
it'd be a
watching.
3-1, but I thought it wouldn't be a close 3-1 for EG to win.
Yeah,
And honestly, that did not go the way I thought. The star player wasn't the one I thought. I think that, well, JoJo played pretty well, actually, honestly, in my mind. I think Revenge had a couple standout games. I will say the 18 kill Jax game was kind of a meme because it's not just him playing well, it's kind of him just like bonking people and last
yeah,
hitting. But it was a 6 series. It was a lot more interesting than I actually imagined to be. To be honest, I thought the TL NRG game was going to be the super exciting one, but this one was kind of a banger. It was a weird banger though, where they were just like beating the crap out of each other, game like just taking turns punching each other.
yeah.
It was like 1-0, then it's like 1-2, and then they came back. So I thought it was a good series. I will say that Insanity was pretty legit. I think he has a decent champion pool, and he showed that like he's definitely like I wish this team didn't play Ruby at all, but I do respect orgs for giving their starter a chance when they sign him because you are moving your whole life. If you don't even get a chance, that's like really screwed up.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting analysis. I actually think everybody in the series played. They could have played a lot better, but oh man, it really felt like TSM was highlighted by their whiffs. I think it's pretty popular if you go into like the post match discussion for the game or like look around on social media. But oh man, it was rough in that game 5 where Chime was missing his ultis and his like bar Qs on like stun targets. I noticed that it totally like turned the shift of the game of game 5, which was like in the early game pretty close, and then it just snowballed like out of control insanity for or insanely not insanity for Revenge and EG, and then you had like Revenge just dodging everything and dashing around and getting away from 5 people being chased. Getting TP'd on, and then there's also JoJo and Revenge are like 2v5ing TSM, and it's just this really awkward back and forth where Boog is going in, and then Chime is walking out, and they switch places. It was a rough game 5, I think, because the rest of the games, yeah, like you said, they were very like dominant and stompy. And then I was kind of hoping game 5 would be close, like both teams kind of like settled into what was maybe good in their like little meta that they had with each other. Yeah, I mean, I think for the players that I thought were going to do worse didn't do as bad. The players I thought were going to do better didn't do as well. Like Hanser was a bit better than I was expecting, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, Wild Turtle and Chime were like quite a bit worse than I was expecting as well for TSM side. Yeah, any other thoughts you want to continue onward, and then we can maybe do a little back and forth.
Uh, the only other thoughts I had about this was I thought it was a little bit interesting in the draft. Personally, I think
Mm,
throughout the series we saw a lot more, in my mind at least. I felt like there were a lot more picks that were just being thrown around back and forth. The reason I mentioned this is like I felt like Lucian had a little bit of priority, at least early on in the series. I think it was played mid in game 1, which
yeah,
at least as far as I can tell, the major reason I haven't seen Lucian mid in a hot minute. So that was very cool to me. I
yeah,
still like that NA is willing to pick Yone. It's still played elsewhere as well, but it's still a rare pick in general. So that was cool. And the last thought I had was I think that EG or not EG, Revenge's willingness to pick carries on as NA is like really cool, but it also probably won't scale. So like if EG is our 4th rep, for example, or a 3rd,
yeah,
I don't think Revenge is good enough to play Jax, Fiora, Aatrox over and over against like top laners. But he is
yeah,
good. But
yeah,
it's just like it's the fudge problem, right? So they're getting some success there with him playing carries top, but I don't think he can survive laning phase, honestly. If Hanser was looking, not getting the shit beaten out of him, I don't know if that means Hanser's playing better or if Revenge's laning phases weren't as dominant as they should be on that team.
Yeah. I think that's actually a really fair point to make. I definitely think Hanser picked it up a bit more, honestly, than he did his regular season. But still with that, Revenge, yeah, he should have had harder advantages in more of the games. That's fair, but this is his first playoffs Revenge ever, I think, right? Because he was only on Immortals, only on 10th place. So, yeah, he's green to playoffs. So,
I think
not
he's
bad.
been on a playoffs before when there was like top 8 and Immortals barely eked in, maybe once, but
maybe a 7th place, yeah.
But yeah, because they've definitely hit 7th twice, or I think in their whole org in the last couple of years. But like, that's not really playoffs, and you're not on a real team, so it's like you're pretty much right.
Yeah, maybe he had one way back in the day on Immortals. But yeah, for the most part, I think I'm still generally positive on how Revenge played. He had some. How do you not be positive with his insane highlight reel? But
that Aatrox game was sick. I actually big props when he just started killing. I'm like, oh, we're just doing this. Okay.
Champion is so broken. I'm actually amazed when we go start talking about the next series that it didn't get picked at all. This champ is so busted on this patch just because of the Q buffs. For those that don't know, his Qs just got insane damage buffs. That's pretty much just the summarized version of the patch notes for Aatrox. But continuing on a final note for this series and these teams, they're both still in it, right? So even if they look a little rusty in the series or whatever, they can still bounce back. They have a chance to figure out what the playoff patch is like and get a little bit of the stage jitters out because Sheedon, I actually think considering his situation, he played pretty well. He is extremely green, very, very rookie. He had some nice moments on Poppy. So that was cool to see. I also think that the bot lane, while they weren't super impactful this series for EG, they weren't choking or doing anything too weird. They were just kind of there. And then it felt like it was JoJo, Sheedon, and Revenge just making the big plays. So EG, I think they're still figuring a lot of stuff out because they have their new jungler. But for TSM, I think they almost had it. They could have really had it in that game 5 if just a couple of things had gone right in the early game. Literally just not whiffing skill shots on stun targets.
If their bot lane plays to par of what we expect from Turtle Chime, it's got to be a 3-2 the other way, right? This is such an easy if to say for any series, but I'm just saying that for how reliable they have been in the regular season, it was surprising, especially because Turtle's the second most tenured player here actively playing.
Something like that, it's tied with Double Lift, right, for most tenured, I guess. Yeah,
because Double took 2 years off and Turtle took a year involuntarily off, so it's hard to say, right? Because Double was there for at least a split longer than Turtle. Turtle came in for Chaos in Season 3, right?
No, it was before LCS started. Turtle came in for Chaos. Literally before LCS started. Yeah. Or maybe it was for LCS.
No, because Turtle was casted on an LCS game. That was his debut game, was a pentakill on cast.
I don't think that was technically LCS. We can look this up. It's probably not relevant. But we'll talk about that later.
Debut. That's a good question. Now.
Yeah, I thought it was before the LCS actually existed, and it was just Kobe and the other guy just casting a tournament match or something.
He debuted for TSM in 2013, so it was NALCS Season 1.
Oh, Season 1. Okay. All right. It was the very first LCS season.
It was the first LCS season, 3 months in March. Cax got benched.
Okay.
But, it was so jank back then. It's hard.
Yeah, I thought it was just a random, tournament game. Because that's what, a lot of, super OG highlights you see for, Double Lift on Blitzcrank. Those are just random tournaments. That's not an LCS.
Yeah.
And, Afremu playing ADC and stuff like that. All right, that was a big tangent. Big tangent. Talking about Wild Turtle, though.
ADC, that's a throwback.
Yeah, but talking about Wild Turtle, he just disrespected the Aatrox super hard in that game 5. Just, walking up and, getting hit by third Qs and stuff like that. A lot of cleanup. Insanity, he played, I think, pretty well. But he's not a super rookie, but he's kind of rookie green. He had a couple of questionable Tristana jumps that got him killed, and that could have turned things around. But so did everybody. I think Boogie kind of had an off series as well compared to his regular season form. So that's it. That's generally, I think, where they're going to go. We can talk about the matchups coming down the line later, but we'll move to NRG versus Team Liquid. And here, before we start about this series, I kind of wanted to talk about I don't know, just like but the All Pro for top lane. Okay, so I don't know if you knew what my All Pro was, right? And like I had third as Dokla. Mine was Licorice, Fudge, and then Dokla. And I was really trying to figure out what to do against Dokla versus Summit. And I think this series really summarized like what I felt about these players in that it was close, and maybe I should be putting revenge there, but dang, like these two top laners were so inty, but it was just Dokla able to like actually pull it out in like late game team fights and do stuff that actually made the difference. But God, both these top laners, I could not keep my sanity in check. They were getting caught 24/7.
It was so funny. I agree.
Christ.
I 100% agree. I also totally see through the series like why Summit was rated so high. Amongst all top laners and amongst players, he was rated the highest internally amongst like top laners. Just like put him as the best because he's just impossible to play against. Like he's such a pain in the ass. Imagine screaming this guy every day and you're just like, oh my god, he's beating my shit in. Even if he's brain dead after that. So I totally think it's interesting. I do think he's less dumb than Alfari that one playoffs where he got ganked 5 games in a row every game. So he's better than that in the early game, but Alfari might have been better late game, honestly. I don't know what's Liquid's addiction with these super polarizing top laners, but I agree. I think that you are absolutely right about them just trading dumb blows with each other. It was not like a top lane clinic.
No, it was like, oh my god, you're caught again, dude. Like, how many times have we been down this road? That was just what I was feeling with these guys. So, I mean, for my All Pro, if you're listening, Revenge, I apologize. Maybe I should have put you third. It was a regular season All Pro. But anyways, let's talk more about this series focus. Yeah, this was an interesting one. It was almost an NRG 3-0, actually. If you look at Game 3, like, NRG almost clean swept them, and it was a bunch of, like, plays from TL and a lot of getting caught by Dokla to kind of bring TL back into it, and then we got to Game 4, and yeah, I don't know. This series was a big infest, a big infest, but I'll just say that I saw some pretty interesting stuff from APA. He did a lot of inting too, but gotta respect the aggression. You know, he made a lot of kills, a lot of plays, especially on Tristana. Any other thoughts you want to go through? Or just talk about the series. TL.
I think APA has the right mindset to play the game, but I do think he might have a champ pool issue. If Team Liquid can't get into the right meta for him, it's going to be tough for them, right? In best of 5s, in best of 1s, they're fine because they have, they can pull out stuff randomly. But when we saw the Jace versus Tristana dynamic, whenever Jace or Tristana was like being contested, I felt like his Tristana was better than his Jace. I thought his Jace was very serviceable past the laning phase, but that's a problem, right? Like he was landing good EQs, he knows how to play team fights, sort of. But his laning phase, I felt like Palafox was just gapping him, and that's a big problem when in a team, and like that's the opposite of Harry, where he's good at laning, but oh my god, past that, like if you could combine the two, it's like, oh, we have a real good like overall player. But I do agree. I think my rating of APA dropped a little bit throughout the series. I think Core had a terrible series. I think that it just has to be said. I put Core as my second, I believe, All Pro vote. And he I think he needs to read what Poppy does, or like just like there were so many times he just like banged his head into Poppy in Game 2, I believe, as Leona. And I'm just like sometimes it makes sense to pop the W early, right? But I'm just like, no, he's actually just inting. I don't really think there's actually that many thoughts in his head. And it's his specialty. He was playing mostly engaged characters, so that's very concerning. I think Summit still did his job on the team fine. I think Jan or Pioshik were the best players overall throughout the series. I think Jan is legit, like in terms of NA talent, like especially when you're AD carry on a team full of interdogs. Like it's actually so hard to play when your support's dead, or your mid laner is being pushed in, or your top laner is dead randomly. So big respect to Jan, and I think Pioshik's still pretty okay. He has good looks for how bad it is to play with like losing mid lane, for example, or top laner getting caught. So that's my read. I think Liquid was worse. I think NRG is actually really exciting in the sense that like they looked very solid. I like the Ezreal looks. I don't think a lot of NA teams are playing Ezreal. And you could tell, right? Because Liquid would go even in a fight, and then Ezreal would like land a couple pokes, and then he just E's forward and just kills everyone. I'm just like, oh my god, guys, like, do we not know what Ezreal does? Like,
Yeah,
why are
getting
you
kited.
still like, you could have just gone even and then taken the next fight, because your team's more of an all-any team when they had Set, when they had Leona, and they just like dicked around and tried to like out hands, because I guess Liquid's probably used to winning hands battles and scrims or something like that. It felt like they were not respecting NRG at all. So
Yeah.
my last takeaway from the series is Liquid looked really bad. A lot of their flaws were exposed by NRG, but at the same time, they do have the lower bracket, and they're probably gonna not play so stupid and disrespectful this time around. I think they thought they were gonna stop NRG. That's how it looked like when they were playing, because they kept taking fights. I'm like, why now? Why are you taking this fight? Sorry, that's my rant.
That's
Liquid's
cool.
always my territory.
Yeah, no, it's fair. You said a lot of things I agree with. Like, definitely Corey J going for a lot of fights that are just like, these are losing and you're still going forward. It's like really clear that these are not advantageous, especially when you're running in like half health or low health into an Ezreal who's like life stealing off of you, healing off of you. You know, he's got Ocean Soul sometimes. Like, it was not a great look for some of these Corey J fights that you can tell like he's leading the charge. You can assume that he's calling for them in comms and stuff too. He's baiting his teammates a little bit here. But I will say there was a lot of team fights, or not a lot of team fights. There was a lot of engages that he went for that I think his team completely abandoned him on. It was definitely game 2 for sure. Game 2 was so winnable for Team Liquid. It was actually unbelievable how winnable it was for Team Liquid. It was just 2 key moments. Core DJ flash engages onto Palafox. Palafox doesn't have flash yet. Summit is right there next to her, next to Palafox, across the wall near Baron. He doesn't choose to flash in and ulti. That's a one team fight. That's a Baron. Like, that's just really winning.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Core DJ made a good play there. He got Palafox stuck. He was like, there's not a lot of room for Palafox to go right. He can't really go left or right. He's got no flash. Summit has flash. Kennen should have annihilated that fight, but he didn't go for it. There's another one, game 1, right, where Pioshik steals Baron. Summit jumps over on the Gnar, and he has ulti, he has flash. There's a moment where a bunch of energy actually gets stunned for a little bit and funneled into the Baron pit. Summit had the easiest flash ulti to get 4 people of energy dead. And he doesn't. He doesn't press any of his buttons, and he lets his Mega Gnar run out, and he's Mini Gnar, and then both him and Pioshik die. And even though Pioshik steals Baron, they lose the game, right? So I was really disappointed just in those moments for Summit. For like, he does all this like laning phase stuff. He gets a good amount of attention. He is just pooping down the throat of Dokla.
Best way to put it. How else can you put it, really?
Yeah, and then he's just like not performing in the team fights in the big moments. And you know, they're also in those moments too because a lot of Team Liquid have been throwing around the fights. I think in general though, when you look at game 2, that was like the turning point I think for the series where NRG just, you know, even in game 3 they lost it, right? They almost won it. Like, I felt like game 2 also had Yeon's worst game where Yeon and APA's like, APA had a good game and then a bad game like in this series, and then Yeon just had a bad game in game 2. They kept dashing into Poppy W. Like, Poppy W is up and it's been up. It's not like Contracts is outplaying them by reaction timing his W. It's just up, and then they're dashing into it, and then they're getting grounded and CC'd, and you know, take a little and I'm like, you can't press flash anymore because you're grounded, bro, and then you die. You know?
I do want to add in though, it's not Liquid. Also, just has a bad matchup in NRG. NRG to me is like Golden Guardians. There's not as much individual firepower, but they're very good at these kind of set plays. They're very good at synergizing. Well, NRG traditionally, honestly, a lot of regular season NRG hasn't looked like this. So this is the best they've looked in a while. But if Liquid runs into a different team, say that's more hands-based, that's more focused on like the talents of the players, like EG, or very specifically C9, if they somehow meet in bracket, I still think Liquid's favored. It's like Liquid has a good matchup against, like, I mean, they 2-0'd C9. Through all the shit that was going on throughout the season, they 2-0'd C9 and then lost to some of the other teams, right? Including, I think, NRG once. NRG just, they have their number.
Yeah.
So it... all that's to say is I hope we get a good matchup, or we play well. I know what the matchup is, but I hope we play well in the matchup later on.
Yeah. We'll see. I actually don't remember if there's a bracket flip or not at some point in the playoffs journey. Because if I think they include one. Because remember when that time when GGS played TSM like 3 times in a row or something.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure ever since then, there's never been like a ability for them to keep clashing on the same side of the bracket.
Yeah, so TL, if they win their next series, the series after that, I think it gets a bracket flip, and then they have a chance to play C9.
Yeah.
And of course, they could just keep winning and then eventually play C9. But yeah, so that could be interesting. We'll see if that ends up being true, if TL can beat C9. I have my doubts just because, I mean, the thing that I feared the most happened, and that was Summit was just choking at key moments. Like, that's like just been the main thing that I've been had my eye on. And,
Yeah, but he's against Fudge in playoffs. So, like,
we'll see. I mean, Fudge that day is pretty good in playoffs. It's just, international is where it goes. And
okay, that's true. His regular season was bad, but his playoffs generally has a good record. You're right.
I mean, last year, C9 looked pretty garbage when they put Sven in support, and then they just won the whole thing, right? So,
and they looked pretty garbage internationally.
Yep. So we'll see how that goes. Let's talk about NRG, like, focused more. So we already talked about Dokla a bit, but I think Contracts had a pretty great series, honestly. Just lots of fighting, just like, I don't know, he's just in there. He's constantly fighting, constantly trying to make plays. A lot of them are good, some of them are bad, but I mean, he's got the follow-up with Palafox. And honestly, okay, FBI, he's super boosted. I'm not going to lie, this guy is Omega boosted, but he had a good series. Like, he did have a good series. He just, like, he has no hands, though. Like, FBI was missing all of his cues on Ezreal. Like, you're in the right place, you're getting fed, you're landing enough poke, but, like, then you get into these skirmishes and fights where it's like, dude, you're just killing them with auto attacks. You're not even landing your cues, FBI. I was so Omega tilted, and being like, I don't know. And then I also, but they're still winning, right? So how am I supposed to feel about this? It's crazy. Yeah. How do you feel about NRG? Just like how their individuals performed.
I agree. I think Contracts played really well. I thought FBI, while I agree, his in-game mechanics weren't good. For once, I thought his positioning and, like, staying alive as the last guy in teamfights to be a threat, like, actually saved a lot of NRG moments. There were a lot of moments where TL actually had a good first look, and I was like, oh, nice. And then TL decided to hang around, chill out, ARAM a bit, and then they got destroyed by Ezreal. It was Ezreal Rel 3 games in a row. So honestly, do we get to see much of it, or were they crutching on a combination they found OP, right? That worked for their playstyle, which was punishing opponents' mistakes. Because
just to comment on that combo, LPL started. I think pretty sure JDG played it in their first series against LNG like 2 weeks ago. Ezreal Rel. So
that might have been the first case of it at a major region internationally.
So,
now that you mention it,
it was a good copy. It was a good copy. Good steal away. I think we're going to see more of it. I think Ezreal in general might see more play.
I think Rel's value in draft is just so high. It's actually crazy to me that it's not prioritized higher. After, like, I watch LPL or LCK and you just, like, see Rel jungle, and then the next game is Rel support, and I'm just like, yeah, of course it is. Why is this? And it's weird because Liquid has a Rel player. Core literally was one of the first to pull it out this season before it even got, like, notoriety, and then they just had no prior on it. Honestly, it's kind of nonsense to me how it got into that state. Yep. And it's not like he was getting something like super high price. He was getting Nautilus, he was getting Leona, and then Set. I will say the Set is interesting. I've seen it elsewhere, but I don't think it was coordinated well. As you were saying, Summit just isn't on the same page to make huge plays. He's just extremely good at laning.
Yeah.
But NRG, more focused. I don't know how it keeps going back, but more focused on them. Palafox, I think, gapped. I think he was so good this series. He was constantly making pressure, constantly winning his jungle, which makes Contracts look good. His team fights were pretty good, and he was, like, literally emoting on APA, like, in the last game. I thought that was hilarious. I was like, oh, okay. APA is known for emoting, and Palafox was just pretty much like, oh yeah, you picked Jace, huh? With the defensive runes, and barely didn't get a kill. It was really sad.
I'll show you how to play Tristana. Yeah.
And I think Ignar had a good series, more so than FBI in some senses, but they're kind of always tied together, and they're both, to me, it's hard to get excited about them. But FBI at least had a brain, which in the regular season he did not in so many cases. He was actually no hands, no brain. So maybe he turns his brain on for playoffs because he's used to playoffs. He's been on very successful playoff rosters over and over on GGS and 100 Thieves.
Yep. I think it's definitely because FBI just has good fundamentals. He can read the map well and just, like, goes to, like, absorb farm at the right place at the right time. Definitely that's, like, been apparent for like since his entire time on 100 Thieves and on EG and on this roster NRG. So FBI is obviously good at that, but oh my god, dude, I cannot shake this hands problem that I keep seeing him. Like, I am still waiting for us to see the godlike FBI that won LCS like a couple years ago. So,
Mm-hmm.
Ignar, he had a lot of whiffs, but the difference I feel like with Ignar versus Corja J whiffing, for example, is that his whiffs never get his team all dead or gets himself killed. Like
Yeah.
Ignar was whiffing, and then he would flash out and live and be fine, and like Pioshik would get baited into like flying across the map as Maokai, right, following the Rakan E. Or generally, like, I don't know, when he was playing Rel, like he would go in and he just wouldn't die as much. Like he just wouldn't be in those really awkward positions. So I don't know what's that about. Maybe that's just about TL reacting poorly to just kill Rel, because there was a lot of whiffs that Ignar threw out there. But yeah, I think for the most part, my MVP for Palafox was really consistent, man. NA mids, 4 NA mids in the first section of playoffs. Pretty cool, right? I'm digging it.
Yeah,
It's
there
not
was
bad.
a time where it was literally Po Belter.
Yeah.
That was it.
It was only NA mid, yeah. We got 4, and they were not the worst on their team. In fact, they were better than some of their import counterparts on the same roster. So I'm digging it with the NA mids. Palafox, JoJo, they look pretty solid. Alrighty, well, those are our 2 series. Anything else you want to leave before we talk about next week's matches, which I must look up?
I would say there's not too much I had to highlight, so no. I think that was it. It was a
All right.
pretty exciting weekend, even though I didn't like the result.
Yeah. I think the games were fun. Man, I really hope the quality goes up. Just like I get it that around the world there are lots of messy plays, and I'm fine with that if you have a really messy play. But like the hand stuff, right? Like they're just missing skill shots on a stun target. Like, come on, guys, we can do better. Or just missing like 7 Qs in a row on Ezreal. We can do better, guys. I believe in NA. But let's move on to the next series. First one we got up is Dignitas versus TSM. Honestly, this is one of those years where, like, I think last year we all got tricked into thinking that the bottom half of the bracket, like the lower bracket, was not going to be that fun. And it ended up being all 5-game bangers last year.
Yep.
This year, I kind of think I'm excited for the bottom bracket. I don't think Dignitas is a pushover, and that Dignitas TSM is just going to be like, yep, upper seed, just beating down on the lower seed. So I'm kind of stoked for this one. First, do you want to talk about the teams first, or do you want to do your prediction first, and then have the talks after highlight your prediction?
Let's start with our prediction, probably, and then we can
right.
color it with that.
Yeah. Let's. So who are you taking? Dignitas versus TSM. 5 game best of 5.
Yeah. In my mind, I'm taking TSM, and I think it's gonna be a 3-1. I think go ahead. You should say your prediction. Then
Okay. I'm gonna believe in the Jensen Santorin Rich playoff veteran buff. I think they'll still be less coordinated than what TSM sometimes looks like, but I'm going Dignitas 3-2. I expect this to be messy, though, and kind of unclear who's going to win from game to game, from minute to minute, probably.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that, like, in my mind, Dignitas is kind of on a downtrend. I think that Rich just, except for maybe like 1 or 2 games in the last half, like he just kind of could not get it together. And I strongly fear it is the classic NA debuff, where you just no longer in Korean solo queue or Chinese, whatever he played in when he was back in LPL, and he's just not getting the hands dip anymore because it's hard. So many people can't adapt, right? The ones that can, it's so obvious to tell. You can tell from an early time, and they usually keep it up for a long time, whether it be Impact or Berserker, right? Are the key examples. So to me, I feel like Dignitas has issues there. I do believe in Jensen Santorian playoffs, but do I believe in the rest of Dignitas with the way they've looked? No, I honestly don't. I think TSM, like, they could have been in the upper bracket right now. So to me, they're like a much scarier team. Dignitas is the lower seeds, as far as I understand the playoff structure. So they're like for a reason. So I think this TSM team, once again, they still have no pressure on them. They don't. Well, no pressure in the sense of like, the org is just going to go away anyways. So it's not the classic TSM pressure you usually get, where it debuffs them in playoffs. but they are fighting for their jobs. So that is pressure, but it's also motivation.
Yep.
So I want TSM to do well here. I think it would be better if their last split they have like a decent showing versus just losing to Dongnatas.
Dongnatas. Yeah, I mean, fair point. You could sway me to either side. I don't feel strongly about either team winning here. If I'm being honest, it's such a crapshoot, guys. They're so inconsistent. I mean, that's why I feel the same way about EG, right? It's like, yeah, EG is also pretty. If EG fell down to the lower bracket against Dignitas, I wouldn't be confident that EG would just beat Dignitas. Honestly, I really wouldn't. They have a new player, and it's a messy series. So, yeah, Dignitas. I don't really have much to sell the listeners to everybody here to believe in Dignitas over TSM. I'm mostly just hoping that Jensen Santorum. This is more of a prayer. I want some of our NA greats to just show up and just have a great playoffs. I mean, there's Wild Turtle and Hunter, also some of our NA greats, but Jensen Santorum, I don't know. I've been rooting for these guys for quite a long time on being top players and top teams, and I want them to I don't know. They've played together so many times for so long. I hope that these two guys can get it together and just have a big mid jungle difference. Just have some great synergy, because that's something that these players should have and just haven't been able to show a lot. So will we see it? I don't know. I'm hoping so. I think it'll be a fun series. It's going to be bloody. It's also Poom in playoffs too. This guy is always fighting, always going for engages. They don't always work out, but sometimes they do, and it's exciting. Tomo, this will be his first playoffs, so exciting for him. I hope he can, I don't know, do something. He can maybe go for those big highlight moments that maybe sometimes he's too afraid to go for. But yeah, let's talk about the next series, because this is a long weekend, actually. So we got 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid. It's Doublelift versus Core JJ. It's, it's the divorce battle. It's this... The wife left the husband, and he's got the new family. She's got the new family. How is Doublelift doing? That's right, Doublelift's the wife in this situation.
Yeah, everyone knows that. You can ask 100 people. I think 70% would say Doublelift's the wife in this situation.
Yep.
For unspecified reasons. 100 Teams looks like an absolute dog, honestly. Even though I do agree that TL had a terrible series, I think this should be not close. It will be a 3-1, and TL will look terrible in at least 2 of the games because of their mid game. But this 100 Thieves is not a real team, guys. They're only in playoffs in my mind because FlyQuest is just gifting stuff everywhere, and so is late game Immortals, right? So I feel really bad for Doublelift. I think more importantly than this team being weak is that this team has no spirit. It's not like some weak teams. You're Dignitas could do something, right, with their top half. You look at this team in their last couple of weeks, they were maybe win trading. Honestly, if it came out months later that some of these guys retired and win because of win trading, I was like, yeah, I could see it. Doublelift looked like he was ready to punch someone. Honestly, Closer had a good game once, I think, in the last week, but a lot of games he was criminally bad.
Yeah.
The only thing that might sway is I don't know if there's anything in the jungle that might gel with him. I'm trying to think if anything. There is a Closer character. He was trying to make Viego work, right? And he still, for the most part, looked bad in a lot of those games. So that's what's making me very concerned.
Yep. I mean, those are all completely fair, right? I think if we focus mostly on Closer here, he had one good game all split. Literally his first blood was in the second to last game of the entire regular season. That was his best game. That was the only game he got more than a couple kills. So, I mean, he stole Bear in that game. So, at least it was at the end of the season to give, some fans some false hope. But yeah, it's looking rough for Closer. I mean, but here's the thing, right? Here is the dynamic that every fan of pro play, of esports, of regular sports, they know, and they always have this hesitation to vote against players like Doublelift and Closer and Someday, who, no matter how bad they look, no matter how down the chips are, they have a long history of just doing insanely well and winning lots of stuff in playoffs. So it's, how much can you discredit it? I think a big thing to look at is how well is Doublelift feeling. He actually just went to the hospital last week, right?
He went to
So
the hospital for internal bleeding, guys. Like,
yeah,
I'm not gonna joke about it. I was gonna throw a really easy joke. There is a joke there, but I'm just saying that is serious.
yeah. I mean, that's rough. I mean, did closer stab him or something? Like, what happened? I don't know. I was like,
Team guys, please.
yeah, dude. A closer was like, "You want me to gank bot?" Oh, gank bot, and then yeah, no, I'm just kidding, guys. Yeah, we'll see. I hope Double F is just feeling well enough to play, and he's just feeling good. I just want him to see him have a good series, and I only want him to play if he's feeling well. Like, I don't want him to strain himself and like get a hernia or something and just like ruin his health permanently to play one series.
Not,
yeah,
dude. Just like as long as he doesn't retire, right? Just like if it means not retiring, just like skip the series, man. It doesn't matter. Your team's not going to Worlds. Well, actually, I do want him to continue his World streak, though. That is something.
Dude, this would be this is his last moment, right? I mean, not his last moment, but like
I was like, we're going that far?
No, we're not going that far. It's not his last moment, but it's one of Double F's last moments, right? He can still achieve what like Bjergsen couldn't, and eternalize him as the GOAT is if he makes a miracle run. He is the GOAT, like for like a long time. Like Bjergsen is still in that conversation slightly, but Blabber's coming up to really take over the NA GOAT title conversation. If Double F makes it to Worlds on this roster with this kind of struggles with internal bleeding, like, I mean, that is amazing. I think that would be that's miracle-esque type of run. So this is his last chance to do something like that. Like, I think if he falters here and Blabber, he wins this summer and then he actually goes to Worlds and maybe C9 has a good run, or maybe Blabber has a lot of really good showings at Worlds this year, right? You come into next year, like, people are going to start saying, maybe Blabber's the GOAT over Double F. Maybe he has more titles. I actually haven't counted it yet, but they're going to be at, 3 in a row for C9 if they win, which is a lot.
Oh, wow,
that is a lot. Yeah. And all of C9's recent wins in championships are Blabber. Before, they hadn't won since their very first year, right? Just a lot of second places. So, we'll see if Double F can do it. 100 Thieves versus TL, right? If we take a closer look at the matchups, top lane, I actually think Someday is going to be a good fit for Summit. If we remember a year ago when Summit was on C9 in playoffs, the team that actually exposed C9 as completely fraudulent was 100 Thieves. It was Someday and Closer camping the crap out of Summit and causing him to go 0-7-0 on Renekton. So the top lane matchup is definitely, I think, Someday favored by a long shot, even if he hasn't been performing that great. Any thoughts on the other matchups that you might want to talk about between these two teams?
I think Pioshik this whole season has been objectively better than Closer. Like, Pioshik's not perfect, but like honestly, considering all the ups and downs, especially with Harry in the mid lane when he was there, Pioshik just looks really good. Honestly, he deserved I think he got 3rd All Pro, and he deserved it. And Closer is probably 10th or 9th, like next to Kemby, right? Except for that last weekend. So as far as I'm telling you, that's a huge gap. I think that Sunday definitely will show up for playoffs, and I think Double F, as long as he's not actually injured. If he's actually injured, why is he even playing? He should not start.
Yeah, he shouldn't play, yeah.
I think this is a great matchup for APA because I don't think Quid's taking advantage of shit. Like, I think this guy has had like 1 lane advantage, maybe the whole split, maybe 2, off of his own play, because Closer's not contributing. So, Quid, to be fair, had no jungler, and he's a mid laner. And then besides that, I will say there is maybe room for Busio to actually make a gap if Core keeps playing like no brain on. Because like if Ignar could look that good, and that's it relatively speaking, look that good in terms of impact, yeah, Busio I think is a better player on average than Ignar in my head. The asterisk being he doesn't have playoffs experience. So like, good God, imagine if Double F just came off internal bleeding and he has to bleed on the Rift too, watching his support and his mid, and like it's just it's really hard. But all the pieces there, dude. This team was something that everyone was talking about. It's like, if Quid is good, top 3, top 2 potentially, right? Yeah. And just they're the only reason they're not the number 1 conversation topic is because FlyQuest exists.
FlyQuest exists, yeah. It's true. Yeah, I mean, I expect this. If everything that happened this split is evidence to what's going to happen in the future, then obviously T-Liquid 3-0 is this team, and it's a mega stomp, right? But that's the thing about pro gaming. That's the thing about League of Legends is not everything is about just what happens in the regular season. I mean, there's lots of times people say the regular season doesn't matter, just making the playoffs.
Yep.
These are the kind of rosters that make those sayings popular. We've had people come into 8th place and do crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's also the grandfather of that saying is literally on this roster.
Yeah, and double lift. So we'll see. I actually am going to push back. I think Buzio sucks. I'm actually really off Buzio. I think his laning is good, but honestly, there are not enough lane advantages that double lift and Buzio have gotten for me to be like, that's worth it for him being super, super useless in the mid and late game. He does no plays at all. So, I mean, Buzio, I just hope you just make plays. Just go in. Just fight. Yeah.
I'll say I agree with you that he has been pretty but I'm saying in comparison to what Core just put out.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Core pretty much put out power Inting.
That's true.
It's hard, opposite, right? They're like they're like running it down in a sprint right now against each other.
Yeah, in different ways too, right? Yeah,
that's true.
Corey J's going in twice as much as Buzio. Well, he's watching the sidelines. He's watching his jungler die for the 7th time and be like, "Oh, okay." Yeah, I mean, I personally am hoping that I don't know, Double Lift just goes insane mode. Someday shows up and is just solid, and then Closer actually just looks like he was a year ago. Even that would be cool. And we just have a good series. But I think a lot of evidence just shows that, like, this season, it should just be a TL 3-0 stomp, right? I'm going to predict it now with a huge caveat to everybody's listening that there is still that little lottery that if 100 Thieves hit it, they could win the whole thing, randomly. Yeah, all right, let's move on to the next series. These are the upper brackets. EG versus C9 is on Saturday. Pretty hype stuff. I'm excited for this series. I still think C9 is probably going to dumpster them, so I'll do my prediction first. I'm actually going to go C9 3-0, but I do think it's going to be a banger. I think there's going to be a lot of fighting. I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth. What are your thoughts on the series?
Also think EG's 3-0. I don't usually vote 3-0s very often, but this is just one of those, like, EG did not show enough poise, and, like, JoJo wasn't, like, on fire, right? So if we don't have some kind of crazy experience, like, even if we do, he might win a game. The only room for me, I think, is the mid duo. Like, I think Blabber's good, but I think Eminence has been fake for a while now. Honestly, he's on a very good team, but him and Fudge are both, like, on fake duty. So honestly, when you put it that way, EG, or when I put it that way, not you, EG does have, like, a lot of strong points, right? Revenge and JoJo versus who I think Fudge and I think Eminence are not actually that good. But no, it's a 3-0. I think Blabber diff is huge. I think Berserker isn't that much better than Forgiven, but I think the duo is stronger by quite a bit than Unforgiven Ayla. I think Ayla is dragging Unforgiven down.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what the dynamic between the bot lane is. I wish we could hear their comms. I suspect there's something slightly off. I don't know. From what I remember, Unforgiven he was kind of a playmaker in team fights when he was on EU and on Mad Lions. He's kind of very nullified in team fights, I feel like, for Unforgiven. He has some of the greatest laning in the entire LCS, I feel like. Just really just consistently, even or ahead throughout the laning phase. And that's important for ADCs more so than other lanes, I think. But his team fighting, it's like, if EG's winning, he's cleaning up and he's positioned perfectly. But if EG's losing, Unforgiven's like, I don't know, he just dies along with the rest of his team. He's not really there. He doesn't make a super noticeable impact. That's where Berserker is definitely way, way different. Like, regardless of what happened with Berserker in laning phase, blah, 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 he's always going to pop off in a team fight, right? So, yeah. And I also think that just like the teamwork and cohesion that C9 has, like, it doesn't matter if Eminez and Fudge are playing their lanes god-awful, just because they're so incorporated with their team and, like, they just know where to be at the right time because of, like, all the practice and years they've had together. They're just going to be good enough to, like, just 3-0 EG, where I expect a lot of, like, EG gigs early on to actually work out, and they're going to get some kills, but they will not be ahead in gold enough to actually matter when it comes to team fighting, where C9 is just going to run them over. I mean, I hope EG puts on a threat. I hope EG levels up. Shiden, unknown ceiling, unknown skill level in playoffs, right? He could hit this point where maybe just go Super Saiyan because that's the kind of player he is. Because we really don't know. So
That's true.
I'm excited for Sheedon to show up. I think he had a great series against TSM. We know JoJo can do crazy stuff. I'm hoping that these two work out well, and we get a crazy mid jungle to compete. Because I agree, Eminez is he's just awkward. I feel like some of his plays and how he coordinates with his team, he just has a lot of awkward moments where he's kind of like off doing his own thing. But yeah, 3-0. That's C9 versus EG. Any final thoughts on them before we move on to the last one?
I don't
All
think
right.
this is a good matchup for EG. I think C9 should destroy them, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's going to be probably. I still think it'll be fun. It'll be spicy in the early game, and then we'll get some exciting team fights. That C9 will probably demolish. All right, let's go to NRG versus Golden Guardians. I think this is definitely the closest matchup we're going to have all weekend, probably. Yeah, I think so. Maybe Dignitas versus TSM is a bit closer. But I think this one should be an interesting one. What is your prediction for NRG Golden Guardians?
I already spoiled it earlier, but it's Golden Guardians 3-2. I think Golden Guardians is still better than NRG. Just like they have very similar, I think, philosophies to the teams. Not necessarily on a player-by-player basis, but just like there's this, the whole is bigger than some of their parts. There's a lot of synergy stuff. And when their junglers are on, like, holy moly. But River's on way more often than Contracts. And that, to me, is like, that River Gory is still, like, to me, the best mid jungle.
Yeah.
Unless it's like JoJo Shade and some that, like, smurf the shit out of everything. But, like, on consistency, it's not even close. Gory River have been total class. If they were NA players, I think we would herald them as, like, some of the best players, like, combos we've had in a while.
Yeah.
Because they're on a not popular team and they're both imports, like it's just hard, and they're not that outspoken. Like I haven't heard a Gory interview ever.
Nope. Yeah.
They win they win a lot, and I have never heard Gory speak. So, yeah, I think that these guys are crazy good, and the only reason it's 3-2 is because NRG. I mean, they're kind of scary when they're the underdogs. I'm like, how is this team so good, but can't beat Immortals?
It's true. They lost Immortals literally the last day of the split.
I just don't get it, man.
I don't get it either. I mean, NRG is, non-rational gaming is following through.
Truly.
Counter Logic Gaming, it lives on in spirit. Yeah, I mean, I'm going 3-2 Golden Guardians as well. That's my same prediction. I actually thought I thought the only prediction I was going to get last week that I knew I was getting right was NRG versus TL was going to 5 games. That didn't even happen. So it would be the most like counter logic thing if this game was not a 5-game series, I think. So we'll see if NRG GGS goes to 5 games. We'll see how back and forth it is. I think that when we look at matchups, it's just like so many matchups just in the head-to-head go in favor of Golden Guardians, I think. Like top lane, I'm taking Licorice over Jokla. Like jungle, I'm mid. It's obviously River Gory. ADC, Stixxay versus FBI, both are pretty inconsistent in what their strengths are. FBI's got great laning, great positioning or whatever, being at the right place, right time, but he has terrible mechanics. But I feel like Stixxay's got great hands in the mid and late game fights, but him getting there is always a struggle sometimes. And Stixxay has these huge plays, but like the reason you have to make these huge plays at a dragon flip is because you died a lot in the laning phase and you're getting caught randomly. So they have these opposing strengths. I think both supports are big playmakers, but I mean, Huhi has got to be better, right? I feel like Huhi is just way more consistent at having plays that work out and just are more coordinated with his team. But there's small edges, though. The small edges on the individuals, and then the whole is like both teams, I feel like, have great macro, great team fighting. Just like regardless of what happened in the first 15 minutes, if they can set up at a Dragon or a Baron, they're going to have some decent team fights. They're going to be able to kill somebody. The question is, NRG, they're just going to get picked and caught all the time randomly before those team fights actually happen. So, Golden Guardians, 3-2. And you know what? If Golden Guardians can make it convincing, though, and 3-0 NRG and just look like an absolute masterclass, I'm rooting for the Golden Guardians trophy this year. I'm rooting for Golden Guardians #1. We'll see how much they clean up in playoffs.
I want them to do well, but
they've never beaten C9. It's like the BLG thing all over
Yep.
again, man. BLG
Yep.
looks so good, and then they face their nemesis.
And they run it the F down and get 3-0'd.
It's actually so tragic. I'm like, wow, Golden Guardians just looks like the better team. Like, I honestly think they're like the complete team. They've objectively played better. BLG objectively played better against international competition than JDG does. JDG is 3-2 against T1. It was a 3-1. It was not a close 3-1 for BLG. I was like, wow, BLG looks good. 3-0.
Yeah.
No. 3-1 against T1, 3-0 against Genji. That's how BLG won.
Oh, wait, really? I thought they 3-0'd T1. Okay.
It was a 6-1 against Koreans. That's what I remember. And Genji was a
gotcha.
complete rollover. So
Yeah, Genji was.
they were just like, Genji's the first seed. I don't even remember they're the first seed. But anyways, I think Golden Guardians is the more exciting team. I think they've leveled up. I think Kuki's looked better than the first split. And to me, like, that just make that along with their jungle mid is like, what are you gonna do? Like, honestly, they stick to. You could slot almost any AD carry in there, and they would still probably be about the same position. And that's not to say 6A is good in the late game, which is good. They can get them there.
Yeah, 6A is good in the late game, but yeah, getting there is always a question. That's where River and Gory are going to come through. I think like they're just such an insane jungle mid, and also the support. Right, jungle mid support is really the trio that we're looking at. Yep, it's exciting. The BLG like comparison is actually insane. I think the comparisons in general that like everyone's trying to align like Golden Guardians with. Like first it was DRX like last split, and then like the split it's the BLG JDG narrative. Man, it would be so funny if like Golden Guardians just rolls over everybody, only to lose to C9 like in tragic fashion in the finals. I think if like C9 just looks like garbage, barely wins their playoff series to make it to finals, and then just beats Golden Guardians. Oh my
just
god,
rolls. But here's the other thing I've been hearing about BLG that I want to posit to you for Golden Guardians. Yeah. I've been hearing BLG, you know, they showed the whole scoreboard. They lost like 7 series now. But then you get the story of Samsung Blue and White, where Blue always stomped White until Worlds, where it mattered. I'm like, so what I'm saying is Golden Guardians winning Worlds.
Golden Guardians is going to win Worlds. They're going to come in as the 2nd seed. They're actually going to have to face C9 in the semifinals, the pivotal NA semifinals that always happens.
It'll be a 3-0 stomp, and then whatever poor sap of a team are waiting in the finals will shit their pants. It'll be BLG versus Golden Guardians, and there'll just be 2 unstoppable forces.
That would be so sick. Yeah, the other semifinals is JDG versus BLG. That would be hype.
Oh my god.
That would be hype. That's the epic storyline.
Riot's got to hire us for these scripts, man. We've got it on lock.
I know. We'll they'll steal it anyways. They'll steal it, and then they won't even give us credit. But that's okay.
It's fine.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm excited for this weekend. I hope we just have good games, good series, because we have a lot of NA representation this year, more than any other year we've had in like a long ass time. I just hope we look good, you know, like because hot damn. It'd be rough, you know. In the last series, we are missing things. We are not hitting stuff. We gotta focus up a bit.
Have you watched EU though? Like EU outside of G2, they had a double 10th place team hit the finals and then get curb stomped, like get smurfed on. So I mean, I think we can get 4 seeds this year. That's my win for Worlds. That's how we win Worlds.
I mean, there's a big chance Mad Lions, I think it's almost guaranteed minimum 4 seed. I think Mad Lions is probably going to get 4 seed for LEC. It's a wrap, guys. Like, it's already done. Like, we got EG.
Mad Lions needs to get NA citizenship, man, for all the services they've done for America.
Seriously, they help us out a good amount. I mean... this is the only positive we had all last year internationally. It was beating Mad Lions.
Twice.
Yeah.
I love Mad Lions. My favorite EU team.
Yep, same. My favorite NA team as well. But yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit about LEC, just like the format. So we just had G2 win on Sunday. Their season finals, their summer split, not season finals, their summer split finals just happened. If you didn't know that, that's actually fair, because it was just in their studio. It wasn't the hypest thing ever. It was kind of unexpected. You have to really be paying attention to know it was happening this weekend, because they have like this thing called the season finale, which is, I guess, like the gauntlet, where they have points accumulated through all 3 of their previous splits to have one last big battle at the end. how do you think of the format? I know we haven't followed it as closely, but we followed it a little bit.
I think when the format came out, I was a big fan of all these games being, they get to the best of three stage earlier. If you're just terror bad, right, you're just kicked out early and you get punished for being bad. And I think that they had some crazy stat like the top four this split for the final split in LEC were the bottom four or bottom three except for G2. So it was like 10th, 9th, and 8th were just playing in the top four as seeds. And I was like, that's sick. I really like that. I think that the season finals where even though G2 won 2 splits so far, they are not qualified for Worlds. I think that is horseshit. I think that that should just be auto-qualified. If you win 2 out of 3 splits, you should be going to Worlds. I don't even care if they were spring and winter, although that would be kind of sad. Like, at the very least, the clause should be if you win any split plus summer, you're going to Worlds. They should not have to play for... Like, there's no World G2 doesn't make it, but if there was, that would be so dog, right? So I think that part's bad, but it's the first year they're implementing the format. I generally think that the games have been more meaningful in group stage and playoffs, but the lack of a live in stadium event is such a big loss. They said the viewership count was down 40 or 50% from last year's finals, same time for summer. It's not an event. It's it almost didn't feel like anything because the season finals is the big event. I hope that's a giant spectacle though, because I will say while they did sack summer, if the season finals is lit, it has the stadium and all the energy, everything's on the line. They're all world spots. So I think it's still a work in progress, and this format will really show its strength when we have 3 international tournaments and they all sync up with every split and everything does matter, right? This year's the awkward, red-haired middle child or whatever it is.
Stepchild.
Stepchild. I was there's one other word to qualify this curse situation. But I think they did a good job, and I think that they did prove that this is more interesting because there was less time throughout the year where I was this is dumb. I'm a fan overall, but I do think the finals being sacrificed they'll need to look into that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited and hopeful that we get 3 international tournaments and then that this feeds into all the other regions doing something similar. That's where it works out. When they're doing it on their own like this, though, it is super awkward as a viewer.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm just excited for the future, and it's a big caveat. We don't even know what's happening next year, right? So we'll have to see. But as it stands just this year in itself, I got to say all 3 splits, finals not being in a stadium, come on, at least... the one that qualifies you for MSI, right? I feel that should have been in a big stadium or something. That should have been hyped up over a couple of the best devs leading up to who qualifies for MSI. But we didn't get it for the MSI qualification. We didn't get it for spring qualification. We didn't get it for this summer. So hopefully season finale. Yeah, what's up?
I absolutely agree with you. And they have the viewership, guys. They're getting 2 to 300K finals, which is historically maybe not that high, but compared to us, that's 3x, 4x. So
dream, yeah.
Why are they not taking advantage of their ability to drawing audiences and get people committed?
Yeah, it could have been so much bigger. I mean, some of the matches that happened between just teams in general, right? We know that it's possible to get insane viewership on any League of Legends game, but we don't always shoot for the stars and allow that to happen. Lack of commitment, right? I feel if LEC really wanted to commit this year to their 3 format, they could have done it, and I think it would have worked out. All numbers say that it almost should have. But you know what? I still like the format. I still like the idea of making all the games matter, right? That's why this summer split felt so great, is because it was condensed. It was the same format, just condensed, right? And that's why it was so much more interesting, because teams had less time. You were closer to playoffs, right? Closer to knowing when things were going to matter. And it was really sketch for a lot of teams to qualify for playoffs at the end of the split for LCS. So, I mean, for the future of formats, right, something that has been super boring for me about LCK is that, I mean, there are so many games that happen, so many best of 3s that are completely meaningless because they have a bunch of lower tier teams that just get absolutely steamrolled, and then you have T1, who's the one that's making it interesting. They're losing against all the lower teams, but for some reason still are qualified for playoffs. It feels like some of these games just don't matter at all,
They literally went 1-7 in series, but because of the extraordinary circumstances in LCK, they're guaranteed 5th at least.
Right?
For viewers who don't know, their bottom 5 teams are 5 wins, 5 wins, 4 wins, 4 wins, 4 wins. Like, it's actually absurd what's going on down there. And our top 2 teams are both 15-1. And T1 has lost to the last place team twice, and they're still going to go to playoffs in top 6. Now, it's extenuating circumstances because most of the time you don't have your best player, one of the best players, not the best player of all time, but the best player in your team. Like, Chovy comes there, they still couldn't necessarily rescue this team, right? In my mind, like, I think this guy's literally just the brain of the team. He's the high. And we finally got to see it.
Yeah.
So T1's you can't create a format around a T1 scenario. And I cannot believe. I think the LCK is actually more interesting because of this. Like, every time I'm like, how did they lose to Bro? How did they lose to Nongshim? And they find a way, man. Yeah. KT picked Vayne just to style on them. This is the most fun I've had watching bottom tier teams against T1 in a long time.
Yeah,
I love Faker, but like, this is so good for him. So he's eating good, even though I'm sure he's sad because he's a good person.
And he wants his team to win, and Faker obviously wants to qualify for Worlds. You know, keep his name in people's mouths. You know, he doesn't want to miss Worlds, but I hope he doesn't hurt himself to do it. But I mean, to talk about T1 for my sake, I hope, like, I think one problem that might be happening is maybe behind the scenes there's just too much pressure from the staff for these players to be like, you guys should be better than this, right? Like, what is probably never going to ever happen, but what I think would have maybe worked, just a completely random perspective of what I know of people, is like, what if T1 lost a bunch of these series against these bottom tier teams without Faker, and then their coaches were like, guys, it's fine, like, let's just not stress about it, okay? It doesn't matter if we lose all of these matches, right? As all we have to do is just keep a positive mental attitude. It doesn't matter how the games go, because I really feel like that is the biggest problem with T1 and their players right now. They look so mental boomed. They look so checked out. And I really feel like if their coaches or they were able to mentally give themselves a break and just relax, right? Like, how can you not say that they have they're the opposite of their brains are turned off. Their brains are turned on and dialed to 11 that they overthink and just screw everything up, it feels like. Versus like, what if you just told Keria to be like, just pretend it's a solo queue game, dude. You will smurf on them. You are so much mechanically better than what these other bottom tier players can do. But you're so in your head and you're so stressed and you have so much pressure that you're just flubbing the weirdest stuff. You're making so many mechanical errors. So, yeah, that's my comments on T1, man.
I do have a question that's a little bit inflammatory, not to you, but to T1 in general.
Sure.
How does this affect the legacy of players like, mostly Keria, but Zeus had a few bad games. He's been better recently. Like, Owner has terrible games in general. Like, do you think, like, obviously, I think most people agree, their assessment of 5 first all-team players doesn't make any sense, right, anymore. Yeah. It's probably, like, Faker's worth it. And then maybe Zeus, and then where do we go from there? You know,
maybe Gumayushi sometimes. Yeah,
maybe Guma sometimes, right? But is Keria not one of the best supports ever now? Just because we now know that he just doesn't have a mental or a brain, and I am assuming it's more the mental than the brain. I mean, you can't be that's not necessarily true, but the roams, the timings, the stuff he's pulled off for so long, he has to have some brain for the game. I think he might be a large part of the reason why T1 always fails when it matters.
Maybe, yeah. He is a shot caller alongside a Faker, right? And he's missing the Faker voice in the calls. He has to rely on Owner, maybe. And it is just not working out. It's some sort of synergy issue where Faker, Owner, and Keria together are pretty solid, but Owner and Keria are so bad together. You start to wonder, what if it was Faker and Keria and somebody else, or Faker and Owner and somebody else, right? Is that elevating them in an unknown way that, like, maybe these 3 players are actually really great, but when you put them together, they're just pretty good, and then when you take out Faker, these 2 players are awful. Like, there's some synergy stuff going on that, like, doesn't reflect the skill issue that we're seeing, because the skill issue of the mechanics and the really basic simple stuff like Owner just path bot like once in your life, like, this stuff is not like explainable by these players just, you're bad. Like, that's just not true. Like, there are things that are just, like, so obvious to basic players that it has to be mental or emotions, something getting in the way. That's like, you don't make these decisions if you're in a clear-headed state. So weird stuff. I mean, I hope that we just get 3 international tournaments, going back to our previous point, just so that we don't have these regular seasons drag on for some of these teams and players and be like, I don't know. I feel like team was honestly suffering having to lose to all these bottom tier teams.
They're just like, dude, I know we qualify for playoffs. Can we just like forfeit them? Can we
Yeah.
just get to playoffs? Like this is so pointless.
We can't stop playing it. Yeah, because they can keep playing and they can keep losing these games, and it's like it doesn't matter. They're still qualified. Who cares?
Yeah.
So it's painful for the viewers, man. It's painful for me. I just kind of stopped watching them fully.
It's so hard, man.
Yeah, it is hard. But hey, LCS is going to be sick. LCS is going to be exciting. Oh, I wanted to talk about one thing. Sorry, I'm going to flame Team Liquid really quick. It was Game 1, okay? Game 1 versus NRG. It was itemization, okay? There was this big period of time where Maokai and Set, they're trying to build Radiant Virtue, okay? It's 400 gold more expensive than another item that is really OP that you could buy, okay? Even Shroud is the answer. I think both of these players should have built Even Shroud, and it would have made a huge difference in Game 1. There were so many times where people lived with 1 HP, like very, very low health in that game. And you know why? It wasn't because Radiant Virtue was worse. It was because Pioshik was sitting on Radiant Virtue components. He was sitting on Radiant Virtue components before finishing it, and I'm like, if that's an Even Shroud, it's 400 gold you're missing before you left base, like, that is a huge difference. And I think it's hard to know for sure, but I think that stuff really added up in that game. And I just want to say, Radiant Virtue is a solid item. It's great if you're snowballing ahead, especially if you have like Jace Maokai, like what they're drafting. But Evan Shroud is just generically broken. I think you can just
also, do they both build out of the shield thingy?
The Aegis.
Yeah, Aegis.
Yeah, Radiant Virtue builds out of Aegis, but
Even Shroud's Lifewell. Okay.
Even Shroud is Lifewell.
It'd be nice if you could just pivot between two. You're like, okay, I'm on a back. I'll buy Even Shroud with the same shield, but because you have to commit to Lifewell, I guess he couldn't transition.
Yeah. That's true. He couldn't transition, and then his other options aren't that great, right? But yeah, I mean, they did that on purpose intentionally so that they could allow Evan Shroud and Locket to be cheaper. Because if you could pivot like that, right, if you could be like, oh, I'm falling behind, let me pivot to a cheaper tank item instead of the more expensive one, that's OP as hell.
I mean, Jackshow gets that treatment. You go from Jackshow, you can pivot to Radiant.
Yeah, that's true. But and that is kind of along the similar lines of what like a Locket would be versus going like a super tank item to be more supportive. So it's pretty strong, but man, I just think Locket and Evan Shroud are so OP for their cost. It's not just like that these items are OP in a vacuum, right? But it's that the lower cost allows you to get your second item earlier, which is usually Abyssal Mask, and it's that combination that allows that Evan Shroud to be OP. Is that you can buy Evan Shroud earlier or Abyssal Mask earlier after your Evan Shroud, and you just do tons of free damage as a tank.
That part I definitely agree on. I think a lot of people generalize Mythics to be all the same price, dude. You buy an Even Shroud or Evan Shroud and a Abyssal Mask, that's 4,600 gold. That's only 1,000 gold more than a Death Cap, guys. Like, you legitimately get 2 full-ass items, one of which is a Mythic for 1,000 less gold. Like, that's insanity to me. And they're also very efficient items. They're not like dog or anything. They're like basically the equivalent of how support enchanter items have always been strong for so long, but in the tank role.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they're really OP for their cost. And I think they could get some like stat nerfs and still be OP. These two items, they're really good. Because they increase your damage as a tank. Okay, it's insane. We were ranting about this. Anyways, any other stuff you want to talk about the meta before we maybe finish this off?
Nothing in the meta. I just wanted to really briefly point out I really liked the All Pro this year. This is the first time in a while where my All Pro, my top 3 was almost the same. So I wanted to really point out like the All Pro team. The first team was Licorice, Blabber, Jojo, Berserker, Huhi. Then it was Summit, River, Gory, Stixay, Sven. Then it was Fudge, Pioshik, M&S, Unforgiven, and Core JJ. And the only people I would be not happy about is Sven over Core in the regular season. I think Sven didn't do a lot. And then in M&S, I think maybe lower than like a Palafox or somebody. Like I just don't think M&S deserves top 3. I think he's 100% carried by the team.
I don't think Emina's. I think he got off the name run to get up there. I put Palafox as my second. And Jojo's third.
Yeah. Your second.
So I'll talk just a tiny bit about my All Pros. I actually had a ton of NRG members over TL members in my third slots, and I was just literally going to be banking on. I followed through that with my prediction. I did actually predict NRG to be TL. So I feel like it's nice. I'm glad. I'm happy these NRG boys are finally getting some credit and some results under their bag.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you know, gotta believe in the talents. Gotta believe in the talent. Alistair, if he was here, he'd be like, "Told you guys, they're winning the whole thing this year." But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for us in the podcast, right? Yeah, that's gonna have it be for us in this podcast episode. That was some awkward phrasing, but anyways, stay tuned for next week's episode where we basically talk about all these crazy playoff series that are gonna happen. But trying to be too toxic. See you on the next episode. Peace.